Good afternoon. My name's Emma Hurd and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Investor Group on Climate Change, and I'm very excited to welcome you here today to our 2017 Climate Change Finance and Investment Summit. And I really want to thank you for joining us. This is the second summit that we've put on. Some of you in the room might recall that the first one took place in October 2015, roughly a month or so before the climate change talks were going to kick off in Paris. And little did we realise at the time that the Paris Conference of Parties would actually deliver the Paris Agreement. For those of you who were here then, or if you cast your mind back to 2015, you might remember that so much of the program of the last IGCC summit was focused on the policy agenda and whether or not the nations of the world would or could come together to agree on an ambitious climate change agreement. And it's almost hard to remember now that so many did not think that it was actually possible, and certainly no one expected that the Paris talks would deliver the kind of ambitious goals and the framework that it actually did manage to accomplish. Fast forward 2 years later to 2017, and it's interesting to see how much of our program over the next day and a half is focused on implementation and action. So I think the shift between the last summit and this summit is probably a fairly accurate reflection in terms of the thinking of where investors are actually at today. But there is still much work to be done. And for IGCC, we really hope to take this opportunity to showcase what investors are doing, some of the enduring challenges, and of course, some of the innovative solutions which are emerging to help investors manage climate change risks and pursue opportunities. So, on to the agenda. So today is very much all about looking at the executive position on climate change and how organisations are managing the issues across their organisation and across their portfolios. So we'll be holding the third of our ongoing series of trustee training sessions, or mock board sessions, where the members of the Perfect Storm Pension Fund, which I might add is not a real fund for anyone in the room, the Perfect Storm Pension Fund, come together to work through some of the real world challenges that boards are facing when trying to look at how to effectively manage climate change. We'll then also hear from our panel of investor CEOs and CIOs on how they're tackling climate change risks and opportunities within their organisations. Tomorrow is very much for the practitioners, so where we look to take a deeper dive into some of the specific themes, emerging areas of policy and practice, where the finance and investment community is implementing new and innovative responses to some really tough climate change challenges. And of course, tonight, where we're very much looking forward to hearing from Admiral Chris Barry in conversation with Walid Ali on the security implications of climate change for a completely different and yet strangely familiar take on climate change risk. So let's dive straight into the formal proceedings and move on to the keynote presentation for today. And as such, I am very pleased to introduce Professor Yongmiao Hong, who's an independent non-executive director at the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, or Icbc, the largest bank in the world. Professor Hong is also currently a Professor of Economics and International Studies in the Department of Economics at Cornell University, and a Professor of Statistics, and a field member in the Department of Statistical Sciences, and a field member in the Centre of Applied Mathematics. So if anyone's having trouble working out their tip, I think we know where to go in terms of the expertise in the room. So today, Professor Hong will be providing us with an overview of the bank's approach to green finance and the programs being implemented to support the low-carbon transition in China. So please join me in welcoming Professor Hong.
Thank you, Emma, for your introduction. And it is a great honor to be invited to this IGCC summit this year. I have been flew from US to Beijing to Melbourne quite a long time, but I'm still pretty excited. Over the last 12 years, IGCC has been dedicated to promote green and sustainable development and encourage the related government policy and investment so as to assist holder of pension and unit trust to respond to financial risk and opportunity created by climate changes. The theme of this year's summit is Action Year's Return, and I like this topic pretty much. It actually the decision-making under uncertainty. In my opinions, the development of green finance in its nature is about correctly dealing with the relationship between finance and sustainability so as to develop new management systems and financial instruments for environmental protection, eco-construction, and green industrial financing. My talk today will consist of 3 parts. In part 1, I will briefly share with you the development of the green finance concept in the world, and particularly in China. And part 2 is going to the core of my talk. I'm going to discuss the idea and the practice of Icbc on the green finance and sustainability. In part 3, I will share some of my personal view on the future development of green finance for commercial banks. So let me start with part 1. Here I would like briefly review the development of green finance concepts in the world, and especially in China. There has been increasing strong groundswell of support from international community for green and sustainable development in financial sectors. Since 1980s, green and sustainable development as a brand new idea and strategy of development has been gradually recognized by more and more countries. And it has been widely incorporated into various economic initiatives, development plan, and global cooperation, and it has become the common choice of our human societies. Back in 1979, World Bank issued Operational Policy 4.01 to evaluate business policy of commercial bank from environmental perspectives. And in 1995, United Nations Environment Program issued Insurance Industrial Initiative for the Environment. And in 1997, it further released United Nations Environment Program statement by financial institution on environment and sustainable development. This 2 documents marks the start for international financial institutions to systematically implement the environmental management system, and it also marked the start of the signatory banks and insurers to make public commitment to sustainable development. In 2003, International Finance Corporation and world's famous enterprises jointly initiated Equator Principles. This is an international financial benchmark for commercial banks to take environment into full consideration in project financing on a volunteer basis. And it has become industrial threshold for environmental and social evaluation in project financing. At the same time, green finance has been developing very fast in China as well. Back in 1981, when China first adopted reform and open door policy, Chinese Central Bank, the State Council, issued a decision regarding enhancement of environmental protection during the periods of national economic adjustments. And today, the current Chinese administration has paid even greater attention to green development. It considers green development as an important ingredient in its 5 development concepts, which refer to innovation, coordination, greenness, openness, and sharing. The Chinese government points out that the green development is the historical choice for realizing the civilian development in China, and it is also an inevitable path toward harmony between human and nature. Quoting Chinese President Xi Jinping as saying, what he says is that the Lucy water and the large mountains are invaluable assets. Correspondingly, building a green finance system has become a priority in the national development strategy in China. In recent years, Chinese financial regulators issued several regulation policies on green finance, and this includes guide for green credit, statistical system for green credit, key evaluation indicator on implementation of green credit, and guide for green bond issuance. In 2013, 29 Chinese banking institutions, including Icbc, signed a joint commitment to green credit, marking the solemn commitment to solving the so-called overcapacity credit risk and promoting credit development. Perhaps I need to spend a few seconds here to explain the word, what is meant by overcapacity. This is the English words with Chinese character. By overcapacity, it means that in China, some industry, like the steel and cement, has produced too much or have excess potential to produce. And therefore, we need to find a way to eliminate or reduce the supply. In 2016, when China was a host country for G20 summit, China included green finance into the key agenda of G20 for the first time, which was positively echoed by G20 countries, including Australia. And as a result, green finance became a highlight in the 2016 G20 summit. Also in the same year, the Chinese Central Bank, People's Bank of China, together with 6 other ministries and commissions, jointly released the guiding opinions on the construction of the green finance system. Marking the start of the system building in China, China therefore became the first country in the world to establish a systematic policy framework to support development of green finance. Just about 3 months ago, Chinese National Finance Working Conference, which is held once every 5 years, again emphasized the importance of developing green finance. Now let me go to part 2 of my talk, which is going to be on the concept and the detailed practice of Icbc on green finance. First of all, I would like to introduce the overall mode of Icbc on sustainable development. Icbc has a slogan, excellent for you. That means excellent service to client, maximum return to shareholders, real success for our staff, and great contribution to the society. This is a sustainable development objective of Icbc. Icbc is committed to serving common interests of various stakeholders in economic and social development. It is also committed to developing the core value of integrity, humanity, prudence, innovation, and excellence. It also try to maximize the comprehensive value to the economy, environment, and society as a whole. Taking the behavioral mode of corporate citizenship as a basis and integrating the unique feature of financial industry, Icbc has developed a 6-dimensional sustainable development model, namely value creation bank, brand banks, green banks, integrity bank, harmonious bank, and charity banks. It constantly strengthens the strategic responsibility of board of directors and the senior management for environmental, social, and economic development. Icbc also ensures due disclosure of annual corporate social responsibility information by referring to international standards proposed by Global Reporting Initiative, United Nations Global Compact, and International Organization for Standardization. Of course, we also have been following pretty closely the guidance of Chinese Banking Regulation Commission, China Banking Association, Shanghai Stock Exchanges, as well as stock exchanges in Hong Kong. Now, let me introduce the strategy and the practice of Icbc on green finance. As the largest listed commercial bank in China, and now the second largest in the world, Icbc is always dedicated to serving the transformation of real economy with green finance and supporting the development of green industry. In 2010, ICBC officially proposed the vision of building a domestic leading and world-class green financial institution. It integrates the concept of green development into all links of its business, including development strategy, policy system, management process, as well as product and services. Hence, a set of effective management systems on green development has been established. And below, I would like to discuss the green finance practice of ICBC in a bit detail. The first is ICBC's effort on green credit. ICBC has made great effort to provide financing service to domestic green economic sectors, such as clean energy, green transportation, resources cycling, and industrial energy saving. At the end of 2016, the balance of ICBC green credit domestically reached 978 billion RMB, an increase of 7% over the previous year of 2015. If we translate this into the data on reduction of greenhouse gas emission, this amount was equivalent to a reduction of 41 million ton standard coal, or 73 million ton carbon dioxide, 287,000 ton chemical oxygen demand, 23,000 ton ammonia nitrogen emission, or 83,000 ton sulfur dioxide, 50,000 ton nitrogen dioxide emission, or 61 million ton water saved. In 2016, ICBC has done a great deal of effort in the following dimension. The first is to improve industrial credit policies. ICBC issued 60 industrial credit policies, positively position green industry, encourage entire bank to actively expand the credit market in green economic sectors, and promote the green adjustment of its credit structure. At the same time, it also issued the guiding opinions of credit on energy conservation sector, guiding the entire bank to expand the quality credit market in 5 energy saving sectors, which include industrial energy saving, architecture energy saving, transportation energy saving, and energy saving equipment and product manufacture, and of course also energy saving service. The second is to strengthen credit process management. ICBC continued to comprehensively implement the so-called Green Credit One Veto system through the whole process of credit providing. This requires timely checking of the green credit classification marks for customers in every link, the result of which will be the essential basis for conducting overall customer evaluation and making credit decisions. It raised specific requirements for monitoring, identification, control, and mitigation of environmental and social risks through the whole credit process. The environmental risk early warning and prevention and control mechanism with responsibility divided to head office and branches was further improved, and early warning notice of risk was issued in time to enterprises with violation of environmental protection and also to the enterprises with a backward capacity. Tracking, monitoring, and supervision was enhanced to realize the whole process of monitoring, management, and control of environmental and social risk. The third is to implement a national requirement of the capacity. ICBC practiced mobility management over some industry with serious overcapacity, and it actively carried out differentiated credit policy with both support and control. On one hand, it stepped up support for leading industrial players with advanced technological equipment, competitive product market, and we also support the rational capital demand of backbone enterprises in merger and restructuring, technology innovation, energy saving and emission reduction, and also for the firm which we call going abroad or going global. On the other hand, it also accelerated to withdraw financing from disadvantaged sectors that suffer continuous loss, uncompetitive product, and a poor development prospect by actively using financial means to help solve overcapacity tension. ICBC promote industrial transformation and upgrading in China. The fourth is to conduct strict credit evaluation and assessment. In order to realize the strategic objective of undertaking social responsibility and seeking sustainable development, ICBC includes social contribution per share into its performance assessment indicator system for senior management. Moreover, the head office also set a quantitative green credit indicator and include them into quarterly performance assessment indicator system for branches to further improve performance evaluation on green credit. The fifth is that we also improve information management on green credit. According to regulation requirement for green credit statistical system, ICBC verify green credit categorization as well as statistical data quality of project loan. It further improved quality of basic data and also check the timelessness and accuracy of green credit statistics, which are reported to regulator and also for information disclosure. The above is the discussion on ICBC's effort on green credit. Now let me turn to ICBC green financial innovation, namely the product innovation on green finance. At the end of 2016, ICBC has accumulatively underwrote 8 green bonds of various types and raised funds totaling 88 billion RMB, ranking the first among Chinese banking institutions. ICBC actively innovates in green bond underwriting and strives to construct an all-round green finance service system so as to provide customer financing compliant with green standard in bond writing. Among other things, ICBC underwrote China's first green finance bond for one commercial bank, the first green bond of international multilateral development institution in Chinese interbank market, China's first green corporate bond for an automobile company, and also the first green non-financial corporate bond for one investment company. Now let me turn to green service that ICBC has been doing. ICBC has an ambitious plan to build an e-ICBC. At the end of 2016, ICBC e-banking transaction value was 599 trillion RMB. The number of e-banking transactions account for up to 92% of the entire bank total transaction, which is a 1.8% increase over the previous year, 2015. Mobile finance continued to develop rapidly, and transaction value at ICBC Mobile increased by 92% on a yearly basis. This is the greatest growth among all channels, including both physical and electronic. ICBC continued to promote construction on online channel and accelerated innovation in internet banking, mobile banking, and telephone banking. In personal internet banking, with a mindset of opening up business, customer, and platform, ICBC made great effort to promote construction of open personal internet banking. Customers of other banks could register with ICBC open internet banking, and all customers could browse the business without logon. The open personal internet banking was put into service nationwide last September. The customer activity has substantially increased since then. In personal mobile banking, ICBC continued to drive forward product innovation and iterative R&D in mobile banking. It launched innovative features such as cashing by scanning a QR code, hospital registration for family and friends, management of contract express payment, and remittance to other banks overseas. In corporate e-banking, ICBC deepened e-banking product innovation and launched 15 innovative products such as real name signature, electronic large sum certificate of deposit, unsecured loan, and corporate e-banking custom pass. It also upgraded corporate mobile banking, simplified the operation process for small business, and optimized the opening procedure for large and medium-sized enterprises. In telephone banking, ICBC promoted the new generation telephone banking architecture to upgrade and rapidly drove forward intensive and smart service. The new generation smart robot was put into production, realizing the full coverage over smart service via text channel. Identification rate of smart service exceeded 92%, which could substitute 450 people in service. More than 90% of manual phone call was answered in the e-banking center in the year of 2016. Business via SMS, WeChat message, and ICBC Link of the Year increased by 105% on a yearly basis. Self-service rate surpasses 97%, and the smart service climbed by 432% year on year. In particular, ICBC has taken the lead among Chinese commercial banks in launching the internet financial brand and rolls out the eIBC development strategy. In the eICBC system, there are 3 platforms and 1 center. For the 3 platforms, the eMall platform, which we call ICBC Mall, is to gather customers and merchants. The social networking platform called ICBC Link is to innovate in information communication and customer service. And the direct banking platform called ICBC Mobile is to develop an internet-based financing ecosystem featuring openness and sharing. And the Internet Financial Center is to provide customers with brand new financing experience. The 3 platforms and 1 center worked well in general last year. For ICBC Mall, the share of order and customer with transaction increased by 26% and 20% respectively on a yearly basis. B2C customer was increased by over 20 million through the year. 17,000 merchants were signed accumulatively, bringing personal mortgage loan of over 15 billion RMB and electronic supply chain financing of more than 500 million RMB. For ICBC's Link, the number of customers exceeded 60 million RMB, increasing by 10 times on a yearly basis. The size of monthly active users ranked 7th in the financial app broad and the 5th in the banking service app. For ICBC Mobile, the number of active customers surpasses 80 million, among which the number of customers at the mobile terminal rose by 64%. Transaction value exceeded 20 trillion RMB, up 92% year on year. The ranking at mobile banking app store registered a best record of 39, a new high in history. For Internet Financing Center, the balance of Internet financing business exceeded 620 billion RMB, increasing by 20% on a year basis. Among them, balance of Internet financing for corporate customers surpasses 320 billion, up 30%, and the balance of Internet financing for personal customers exceeded 300 billion RMB, up 11%. The next, I would like briefly mention the green charity that ICBC has been doing. In 2016, ICBC advocate the construction of ecology civilization and organize institutions of ICBC at the various levels to actively participate in the such activity as Beauty China environmental campaign. It also conducts various environmental protection activity such as volunteer tree planting, care for Mother River, low carbon energy saving and emission reduction classes, and no food leftover campaign. I know that it has been a very long Chinese tradition to order food more than enough when you are treating distinguished guests. So there always some food left over, and therefore no food left over actually is essentially a cultural revolution. Small scale. Number 5, what ICBC is doing is the green operation. And this again is, I'm going to describe this in a Chinese content. In 2016, ICBC continued to practice the concept of safety operation and transform energy use conceptions. The bank adopts green operation, strengthened the saving awareness, innovated in energy saving and emission reduction, and tighter energy control. And let me give you a few examples here. The first is advocating green office. In 2016, ICBC head office accumulatively used 7.7 million sheets of paper, a reduction of 8.6% over the previous year, although our business actually has been increasing over time. Adhere to the concept of green office, ICBC continued to push forward paperless office with IT-based office method, concentrate on processing office business and real-time release of document and material. The bank has promoted construction of various office subsystems and put them into service. This includes the new business document system, the administrative CO management system, the external affairs management system, the meeting management system, and confidential business system, attendance management, the group contact desk, office supply management system, and access card management system as well. Essentially, this covers all aspects of our daily office operation. We also spend quite a lot of effort trying our best to reduce energy consumption of vehicles. In 2016, the annual oil consumption of vehicles at ICBC head office was 86,000 liters, a decline of 8.1% over the previous year of 2015. ICBC promotes the reform on official vehicle system in head office. The first action was to tighten vehicle oil use management to ensure accuracy and standardization of oil use statistics. One fuel card was allocated to one vehicle. And the second action we have been doing is to collect statistics on the monthly mileage of vehicle and calculate their oil consumption per 100 kilometers. Inspection is going to be arranged if a vehicle has a high oil consumption, and refined management will then practice again. All this action actually is aimed at preventing the private use of the public vehicle, and that is the Chinese character. The ICBC also has done in innovating energy saving and emission reduction. In 2016, ICBC head office institution in Beijing, including head office data center, software development center Beijing division, all together record a direct greenhouse gas emission totaling 2.88 thousand tons of carbon dioxide, and a direct greenhouse gas emission totaling 50,000 tons of carbon dioxide. Meanwhile, ICBC Beijing branch record a direct greenhouse gas emission totaling 5,000 tons of carbon dioxide, and an indirect greenhouse gas emission totaling 65,000 tons of carbon dioxide. a number of measures were taken in this regard. The first was to reinforce thermal insulation to increase energy utilization. Low temperature area in headquarters office in the winter was monitored and thermal insulation of the building was reinforced. We also have been working pretty hard to improve the water saving mechanism. And this includes optimizing the water pipeline to adjust water supply and consumption, establishing the mechanism of recycling residual water at pantry and reusing clean water, including the transmission of wastewater from drinking water filtering to the cooling tower of the central air conditioning for recycling. While advocating green development, ICBC attaches great importance to innovation in prospective study on green finance. It has concluded multiple prospective studies, including stress tests on environmental risk, to provide effective tools for evaluation and prevention of environmental risk for financial institutions. ICBC research achievement on stress tests has been leading the finance industry. Since 2015, as a Deputy Director member of the Green Finance Committee of China's Society of Finance and Banking, which is governed by Central Bank, ICBC has conducted such pioneer study on green finance as the study on the stress test for impact on environmental factor on credit risk of commercial bank, and we had made a great breakthrough. In March 2016, the result was released at the international conference called Future of the Green Finance held in London. The achievement was not only the first time for Chinese commercial bank to conduct study on environmental risk quantification and transmission mechanism, but also took the leading position among the global commercial banks. In 2017, as one of the backbone members of G20 Green Finance Study Group, ICBC led environmental risk quantification task force to further stress test study. At the same time, the bank is taking the lead with tens of international and domestic institutions to compile a case study on environmental risk analysis and management of financial institutions. ICBC conduct ESG green rating and green index study. By ESG, we mean environmental, society, and governance. To develop ICBC ESG green index, ICBC cooperate with China's Security Index Institute and track costs affiliated to S&P 500. The periodical achievement report was officially published at the International Seminar on Environmental Risk Analysis held in Beijing in July this year. Index has fully considered the reality of China and the characteristic of Chinese enterprises, and it established a set of evaluation system with scientific methodology and highly reliable data set. In order to facilitate development and application of ESG rating and index project, ICBC also developed the management system for industrial credit risk and ICBC index management system to further improve quality of corporate environmental data. Besides, the bank made effective attempt in design of ESG investment product and respectively developed the Green Investment Index and Green Development Index. The former provide the basis for asset allocation for investor, focusing on sustainable development, and the later index provide the references for regulator to judge the trend of sustainable development of related industrial and set down corresponding industrial policy orientation. ICBC also has taken the lead in organizing international and domestic case study on green finance. ICBC led 40 institutions within Green Finance Committee of China's Society for Finance and Banking to compile green finance development and case study in China and international green finance development and case study. This two work was published respectively in 2016 and 2017. They are the first textbook in the world to systematically analyze classical cases on green finance, and they could be used by Chinese and foreign policy makers, financial institutions, third-party companies, and academic researchers as reference on green finance. Icbc also has played a leading role in promoting inclusion of green finance into G20 agenda via the B20 platform. As a co-chair member of B20 Financing Group Task Force in 2016, Icbc proposed the topic of green finance on behalf of Chinese industrial and commercial players, which was included into G20 agenda for the first time. In particular, Icbc proposed 4 pieces of policy advice which were written into the report that B20 submitted to G20 leaders. These 4 pieces of policy advice are: number 1, to create incentive measures and lower costs for green investment and financing. Number 2, to establish the green and environmental protection standard and encourage disclosure and reporting of investment impact. Number 3 is to improve institutional restructuring and knowledge competence through G20 International Cooperation Platform. And number 4 is to encourage financial institutions to quantify the climate, environmental, and social impact of their investment portfolio. Finally, as the third part of my talk, I wish to share some of my personal view on the green development for commercial bank. I would like to talk about opportunity first. This could be achieved or discussed at least from 3 perspectives that I would like to list below. The first is that the commercial bank can tap into their outlet information advantage to provide all-round domestic and overseas financial services. For instance, Icbc has established over 420 overseas institutions in 44 countries and regions, and it also indirectly covers another 20 African countries through the equity participation of Standard Bank Group. As a result, Icbc business network has covered nearly 90% of global GDP. The bank also took a lead in setting up China Eastern Europe Equity Fund and has been actively participating in the Belt and Road Infrastructure investment plan. I'm pretty convinced that financial institutions, including Icbc and all of you present today, will play a bigger role in corporate environmental risk management. Second, commercial bank can bring into play advantage in product design, standard setting, risk management to effectively prevent and manage environmental risk. For instance, while providing financial service, commercial bank can implement one veto system over enterprises that fail to meet environmental standards. For projects with high pollution, high energy consumption, and high resources consumption, strict due diligence and environmental evaluation should be conducted. Support for green projects in clean energy, energy saving and environmental protection, environmental improvement, eco-agriculture, and green transportation should be put on priority. Third, the commercial bank can better promote international cooperation on green finance. Historical development proved that countries join hands together to develop green finance and promote green investment will lead to a win-win cooperation with mutual benefit. Enhancing international exchange and sharing international experience on green finance will become an integrated part of international cooperation in the future. Today, I have been here talking about the experience and practice of ICBC on green finance. But I'm pretty sure that ICBC also has a lot to learn on green finance from our international partner, including all of you here. And after discussing the opportunity, then let me mention briefly the certain challenge that we are going to encounter in green development. The first is that there are insufficient policy incentive for developing green finance. Green projects are generally featured with high risk, low return, and technical uncertainty. It is often difficult to reach credit extension standard of commercial banks. Most importantly, green financing is a typical example of the so-called externality from an economic point of view. That is, the benefit of environmental and social to environmental and society does not match the return to the commercial bank. Therefore, only by resorting to necessary policy incentive can commercial banks prevent loan losses while fulfilling their corporate social responsibility and promote market-based development of green finance. Second, there's not enough disclosure on environmental information needed by green financial business. Availability and accuracy of environmental information are necessary prerequisites for commercial banks to price credit assets, make green credit policy, develop green financial products, and enhance credit risk management. At this stage, there are still countries that has not established sound environmental information disclosure information system. Many enterprises only disclose limited environmental information, and the content of such information disclosed is mostly qualitative rather than quantitative. This presents a challenge to commercial banks in developing green business. Number three is that there exists room for commercial banks to improve their ability in identifying environmental and social risk. Environmental risk has gradually become a material risk faced by financial institutions. However, so far, commercial banks in quite a few countries remain at the stage of qualitative analysis during the evaluation of project and corporate environmental risk. They seem to lack tool and method for quantification, and they find it difficult to conduct green rating over enterprises and reasonably price the credit product. So given what I just mentioned, the opportunity and challenges that green financial sector encounter, some of my suggestions then follow immediately. The first suggestion is to increase financial discount and support green loan. I think it will be very helpful to strengthen application of financial discount in public finance expenditure on energy saving and environmental protection. This can be achieved, for example, by expanding the size of financial discount and increasing the discounted rate. My second suggestion is to refine corporate mechanism on environmental information disclosure. Disclosure of environmental information can not only provide investors with information on environmental performance of individual enterprises, but it also offers an important basis for capital market to develop green stock index and related product, green bond index and related product, green bond rating, and third-party green bond certification. I think it would be very helpful if the following could be done. Registration could be further improved and compulsorily request public company and bond issuer to disclose environmental information. Stock exchange and authority responsible for approving and registering bonds could set a detailed rule to clarify the content of disclosure and expressly require quantitative disclosure of the key information. Agencies that provide environmental information analysis could be supported to enhance evaluation, supervision, guidance, and incentive for disclosure by enterprises. And finally, the regulation and law enforcement for disclosure could be intensified. Action to be taken against those enterprises that violate related disclosure requirements. My third suggestion is to promote the use of stress test tools by the banking industry to quantify environmental risk. As more and more environmental protection policy was promulgated, environmental risk faced by enterprises will translate into rise of corporate production costs and a decline of the profit. For banks, stress tests can eliminate the future non-performing loan rate of environmentally high-risk industrial and get a quantitative relationship between environmental risk and future credit risk. In this way, banks can review their asset allocation, be motivated to reduce loan to polluting industrial, and enlarge fund input to green industrial. My fourth suggestion is to step up promotion and publicity to enhance the awareness of financial institutions on green finance. Take China, for example. In April 2015, Green Finance Committee of China's Society of Finance and Banking was set up to promote research conduction, achievement promotion, and policy implementation in China green finance sector. Over recent years, a series of substantial achievements has been made. I think in the future, the GFC platform, which I just mentioned, can be used to organize financial institutions for joint research and promote cooperation and exchange between domestic and overseas financial institutions. And finally, my last suggestion was to encourage cooperation and exchange between the green financial industry and academia. As an economist, I know pretty well that there has been a relatively mature field in economics called environmental economics. However, the green finance should encourage research in a new area which we could call it environmental finance. And I believe that this is going to benefit financial, industrial, and academia as well. Ladies and gentlemen, promoting low carbon sustainable development is a common challenge faced by the whole world. As an important driving force for sustainable development, green finance has become a major topic that international community pay increasing attention to. Icbc and myself are willing to join hands with all of you to enhance practice, research, and cooperation on green finance. I firmly believe that this is going to contribute to sustainability and common prosperity of the world economy. Thank you for your attention to my talk and wish the summit a great success. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think that was a very comprehensive and fascinating oversight into the activities of ICBC and also your own perspectives as well in terms of the development of green finance. I might start with just one question, and then I would just ask the audience in terms of your audience questions just to also raise your hand and flag if you have a question. But let me just start first. So much seems to have happened in the last few years in terms of the development of green finance in China. If you were to look forward 5 years, what would you predict in terms of what we're likely to see by way of strong activity in the next, say, 5 years or so in the evolution of green finance practice in China?
Thank you. I think you mentioned 5 years. In China, we had a so-called 5-year plan, and now the current 5-year plan is the 13th 5-year plan. In this 13th 5-year plan, the Chinese government actually put forward a so-called 5 concept of development. And among them, I actually mentioned this in my talk, Among 5 concepts of development, one of them is the green economy. And this implies the government actually is going to put the policy in favor of the green economic sector. And not just the policy, they also going to put the resources, such as the tax break and the entry to the sector that related to green economy. So I firmly believe that in the next 5 years, the green sector in China is going to grow pretty rapidly. And especially like the commercial bank, ICBC and other Chinese major banks, I think the proportion of the credit given to the green line, this is going to increase out proportionally.
I mean, we've also seen such strong growth in terms of investment in clean energy. You mentioned green bonds as well, seems to be very strong as a growth area, and the emergence of green indexes. Are those the types of financial instruments that you also see continuing to grow quite strongly?
Yeah, I think ICBC has taken lead in the study and investigation of those index. And the reason we spend so much effort on those rating index is try to design the product that are going to promote the investment in the green finance and green economy. So it is quite interestingly, about 15 years ago in US, I read an article, there was the weather derivative. At that time, I didn't realize it was related to green finance because it was after the US electricity crisis. But I think that those innovations, or those weather derivatives now are not available in China, but I'm pretty sure that someday it will going to show up.
Okay, you heard it here first.
Yeah.
All right, let me throw it back to the audience. Any questions from the audience at this point? Yep, we have one just over here. There's just a microphone behind you. And if you could just state your name, please, as well, just as you ask your question.
Hi, Lisa Wade from the NAB. Just wondering about carbon. Last week, the United Nations Principles for Responsible Investment Conference was on, and Christiana Figueres spoke about China bringing in a national carbon market. And I was just wondering how relevant a carbon price is to you and how significant the national Chinese carbon market will be to overall global green finance dynamics.
You mean the common exchange market?
Yeah.
Yeah, there has been a very heated discussion on the common exchange market. I think China actually lagged a bit behind the other Western country, including Europe. But I think the importance of the common exchanges that has been recognized by more and more companies, and including the decision maker in government. So I'm pretty sure that someday this is going to become a pretty large-scale portion in our economy, in not just in green finance.
The emergence of the national emissions trading scheme in China is something that's also being watched very closely here in terms of, both the domestic debate but also the emergence of regional carbon markets. Mm-hmm. On that note, can I ask the influence of China's green finance program across the whole region is very clear. Do you also see emerging investment opportunities across Asia Pacific, and including Australia, in terms of new emerging clean energy investments?
Yeah, I think for example, back in 2010, the Chinese central government, the State Council, issued a plan to support the 7 strategic new industry, and some of them actually are related to new energy or the energy saving industry. And after that, there has been a shift or the capital inflow into those 7 the new industrial in Shanghai stock exchanges, and as well as the Hong Kong stock exchanges. So you may know that recently the Chinese A-share index has been incorporated into the international stock index. So I think that is going to help the investment into China, the international investment into China. And also because China's the stock market index has been listed internationally, so it's also going to have the spillover effect outside. I'm pretty sure that as China is currently under a transformation of the economy from those old industrial to the new industrial, and after the new industrial grows and dominate, then the green finance and green economy, especially related to the trade and investment abroad, this is going to increase.
So the green economy is a core part of the new industrialization.
Yes.
Great.
And this is what we call the upgrading and transformation of the Chinese economy.
Great. Another question from the audience. What types of activities are being invested in for green bonds, and who are the investors that are strongly supporting green bonds? Is that fair?
Oh, okay. Well, those so usually the firm or enterprises, they have a large project to invest, and that is going to be related to the environmental protection and so on. So then they usually go to look for a bank like Icbc, and Icbc is going to help them design a type of bond. The investor will depend on where you issue the bond. For example, in China, we have the interbank market. So then the major commercial bank, as well as those medium and small banks in China, are going to be the leading buyer. And in China, there has been quite a few. I think Icbc, I mentioned we issued a green bond here, but actually the number is increasing now.
Just wanted to ask you about the Belt and Road Initiative and what the relationship is between green finance and that initiative, and whether they're integrated together.
So the relationship between Belt and Road and green finance.
Okay, yeah, this is an interesting question. Well, in the past, I think there's the misunderstanding that the China may export those over capacity industrial. By overcapacity, some of them may be related to high pollution and so on. There has been some concern or worry that China may export those. But if you see what China has been doing in the Belt and Road, mainly it's going to be on infrastructure, right? So the highway, the water system and so on. This, of course, are related to the environmental protection. But I think it is quite obvious as long as the Chinese bank, commercial bank, and those enterprises meet with international standard, I think it will be fine. There has been some issue, I understand, like in Burma, right? There are some project that has been approved, but later was stopped. And the region was claimed to be related to environmental. But whether that is the true reason, it is not that clear, because it related to the political struggle in that country. But for Chinese, the commercial bank, for example, I was discussing with my colleague the other day. In China, only 2 banks signed with the Equator Principle. Icbc didn't have. But we actually had a higher standard than Equator Principle in the environmental protection.
You also mentioned in your talk on a few occasions the importance of disclosure and having good information for the market. Do you anticipate that you will see a increase in the amount of environmental data that Chinese companies are also disclosing in terms of their performance?
Yeah, I think in China, after the Chinese government realized its importance, then it could issue regulation. And in China, the government is much more powerful, I believe, than the government here in Australia.
I think it's a safe bet.
I hope I don't offend you. And so I mentioned many documents by Chinese government because those are pretty efficient in the implementation. So I think the Chinese government has been in a process of doing this. Icbc somehow is ahead of time, but after Chinese government issue those regulations on environmental protection, including the information disclosure, I think that is going to be the case. So of course in China, some bank may have the two different cookbooks, and it might be difficult to identify the true and the false information. But as long as a company is going to be listed in Shanghai stock exchanges or outside, I think then the requirement is going to be there.
Great. Well, thank you. I think that was a really fascinating insight into the development of green finance. Please join me in thanking Professor Hong.